very hot. Ow. Hey, welcome back. I'm Jason Jarvie with Realty ONE Group here in the Phoenix metro area. Today, what we're gonna be looking at is we're gonna be looking at my side RV gate, and predominantly what I wanna do is rebuild it. The wood has gotten old, the paint has gotten faded, and second, it's a little too short for my liking. I'm 6'1". I'd like it to be up here, closer to the top of my wall. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna raise the side posts up with the hinges, take the gate with it, add 9 inches to the bottom with a kick plate, replace all of our wood, and then paint the whole thing black and put a handle set in it. So let's get this project started. We're gonna jump right in with cutting down some pieces. This is a piece of scrap 1.5 by 1.5 by 16 gauge. I'm gonna use these pieces to extend the bottom of the posts that mount to my wall. Now I'm doing that because what I want to do is raise those posts up and create new anchor points, thus taking the gate with it, so that with that new reveal on the bottom, I have somewhere to mount the kick plate that's going to run across the bottom of the fence or the 2 sides of the gate. And what I'm using to cut here is a swag off-road table with a Harbor Freight Bauer bandsaw mounted to it. And you can see it makes pretty short work of this tubing here. And this isn't something that you would need to do this project. You could cut this with a sawzall, a hacksaw, that would take forever. The sawzall would be much better. A grinder, a cutoff wheel, a chop saw, lots of different ways to do this. This is just one of the ways that I find works for me to help contain some of the mess. With those extensions cut and prepped, I've cleaned them up so that I can TIG weld these base caps on there. I'm capping these, you really don't need to, and you probably shouldn't. This steel is going to outlive me, so I'm not terribly worried about it. There are many welding processes you could do here, TIG, MIG, or stick. I'm just using TIG because I need the practice. And you can see here I've got some longer posts already. These are going to be my center posts. The gate is going to be 75 inches when all said and done. So what I did is on my latch side, I have a solid post here and I'm going to cap the top and bottom. Once we have the handle box in there, what we're going to do is we'll drill into this side for the latch to go into, like you would on a door jamb. And then what we're going to do is we're going to be putting together our handle box or our lock box, because we're going to cut the gate apart. To add the lock box, we're going to top it off with an 1.5 inch tube like this on the top and bottom so that it's all uniform in the middle of the gate. Here we are with that top section of the lockbox side prepped. I've got this guy ready to go and locked down so that as we start welding this together, it's not going to move out of shape. So we'll get the extension on the top and we'll get the extension on the bottom. And what's important to note here is that because this gate does encapsulate a pool area, what you need to do is you need to make sure of the rules and the legalities in your area. Here, your handle needs to be at 54 inches, and I'm taking that as the handle set at 54 inches at the center line. So what I did to make sure that we were safe is I raised that up 2 inches. So the handle set will be at 56 inches and the bottom of my box will be at 54 inches. There's no way an inspector can come by and say that that's wrong. But if somebody in the comments says otherwise, please let me know. I'll pull it apart, I'll fix it, I'll make sure everything is right. So now that we have our end post extensions built, we have our 2 center posts built, it's time to actually start pulling this guy apart. I'm going to start by pulling the spring off, then I'll pull the gate off by taking the adjuster bolts out, set the gate to the side. Then we'll take the anchors out of the wall using a drill bit and a chisel.
I got a splinter.
Well, besides all the splinters, that's pretty easy. I wound up using wedges down here on the bottom to keep the gate from sinking as I was pulling the adjusters out. So there are a million different ways you can take these hammer set anchors out. You could try to get behind them with a hacksaw. You could use a cutoff wheel, a grinder. I'm going to use a drill bit, drill out the center, and then break the top off with a chisel. But before I start drilling, I'm going to center punch it. Hopefully land on my center punch. There it is. wear safety glasses. Well, that first one didn't work out quite like I thought it was going to. What I learned was you have to make sure you drill down far enough through the center point that the head is going to just shear off of the top. Once I did that, it was cake. Well, with the post and the gate out of the way, I need to relocate it up higher. I'm going to use some 3/8 anchors or wedge anchors in here. So I'm going to be drilling 3/8 holes. I'm going to start with one hole here. We'll put the post up, we'll plumb it, we'll put another hole down here, make sure everything's straight, then we can drill all 6. So it's probably right about this time that any of the astute observers, they're sitting back and they're listening to that drill and they're going, that is not in hammer mode. And you would be correct. I started off with it in purely hammer mode and then went, oh, whoops, I cycled it over into drill mode, and now I am struggling. This was a dramatic oversight on my part. It even wound up causing me to drill this hole slightly at an angle. When I eventually put the drill into hammer mode, this thing kicked into gear and just ate through this brick like it wasn't there. So, moral of the story, make sure your tools are in the proper mode for which you are trying to operate them. It will certainly help. So I've got that top 3/8 anchor hammered in so that I can throw the post up there, and we're gonna loosely snug this into place. By doing so, it gives us the opportunity to plumb this vertical up and down so that we can line up where our other holes are gonna be. And then I'm gonna use the post to mark my location and send another hole through there or drill another hole through there. You'll notice that I still don't have it in hammer mode. This whole post I did in regular drill mode and, fussed through it. The other post is when I finally figured it out. I had that aha moment. This did work though, so it goes to show you if you don't have the tool and you just have a regular drill, you could make this work. It's just gonna suck.
What have I done? This is a nightmare.
And I'm still drilling through this hole. Even on 242% speed here, that took a while. Thankfully, the bit was nice. So now we can loosen that top bolt, slide the post over, hammer in one more anchor, we'll lock the post down, and then we'll use the mounting tabs on the post to drill our other holes and make sure they're all lined up. So to try to keep these two in the same plane, I'm using a piece of angle iron, clamping to my workbench, and a nice tight fit up so that I can get a clean weld on there. And no, I'm not putting a dress shirt on to go to a fun meeting or anything like that. This is just a lot lighter skin protection when it's 100 degrees out or when I'm welding. Apparently I can't put this on either. So I would normally wear my welding jacket, but it's much thicker and much hotter. And with TIG welding, really all I'm protecting from are the UV rays, which I have gotten TIG burns before and those suck. So this does a good job of protecting against that. Go tack spool it a little bit. While I'm at it, I'm not using a special machine either. I'm using a Vulcan OmniPro 220 multi-process from Harbor Freight. So not the nicest machine out there, not the cheapest machine either, but thus far has been a great learning experience to figure out how to do all these different welding processes. And I didn't. So if you're learning to TIG weld, have lots and lots of tips on hand or tungstens that are pre-ground for that very reason. Okay, so to figure out where this post has got to sit, I needed a level line across here. Because I'm going to be making a new base to the gate, I already have this 1x1 tubing. I'm using a pull jack off the top of that post with my level, and I've got dead level here. So all we have to do is get the post up to it, mark our holes, drill them, add our anchors just like that side, make sure that this post is plumb and true, and then we can put the gates back up and get all of our measurements set just right to build the bottoms. Now that we have both posts extended, got my helper here getting ready for paint. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna rough these up, get some of the rust off the outside, and then we're gonna encapsulate everything. Yeah, this does look kind of weird how we're painting it. What I'm doing is I'm putting a heavy coat with the brush, and then my son there, he's coming back with the roller. Once it starts to tack up, it is 95 degrees out right now, and he's using the roller to smooth it out, and what it's doing is it's kind of making it look like a dimple paint, or I don't know, not powder coat by any means. It certainly doesn't look that good. It looks like we rolled it in the garage, let me be honest. But either way, I think it's going to look pretty darn good compared to the rust and flaky paint that was on there before. We did sand these and got them cleaned up, no more flakes, no more rust. So it'll look, well, I suppose like it'll look. So let me take this opportunity to ask you to take a moment, scroll over to the side of the screen, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you want to see more projects. If you are interested in information about the Phoenix real estate market, I will be putting out more data-driven episodes as well, and lots more DIY projects to come. Like, subscribe, comment, do your thing. So now that we've got our posts up, we already took the boards out of this side of the gate. We need to get our inside posts that we made 75 inches, or the same length as these, cut and installed on the gate, and then make the bottom piece, or the kick plate, for the bottom. So this is our extended centerpiece that we already made, and what we're going to need to do is replace this 1x1 here on the end with this 1.5 by 1.5. So we're going to cut 1.5 out of the gate to seam it in, and then we're going to have it above this top bar 1 inch, which will give us 1 inch of clearance down on the bottom, and then we'll fill in the field down here with our kick plate. What we did was cut that rail off 1.5 inches to match the thickness of this piece. I've measured across the top and the bottom. The middle of the gate was actually a little bit narrower by 1/8 of an inch, and I've squared corner to corner to make sure that the gate is going to be square as well. And now we're just tacking into place. A couple nice heavy tacks. I have this thing ready to go. With that center post welded in, it was time to start working on the field where the kick plate is going to go. So on the inside of the gate here, I'm prepping that 1x1 tube to extend it down to the bottom of where I want my kick plate to go. And unfortunately, it was just shortly after this that the camera overheated and I didn't get any more footage. But essentially what I did was just the same as I did on my vertical posts. I extended the bottom here, and then I ran a horizontal from left to right, as we're looking at the screen here, all the way across, connecting to the center post. And it's in this area that we're going to put our sheet steel to give us our kick plate space, which is where we're going to go next on our road trip to pick up the steel from Valley Steel Supply here in the Phoenix metro area. And let's get going. Every time I head out to the steel yard, I walk all over the place. You can see they offer lots of different things here. They can cut or plasma CNC just about anything you want, and then they have all of these racks of bent, rusted, offcuts, and whatnot. I wind up restocking while I'm there, and on this trip, I picked up 150 pounds of steel, in addition to half sheet of 14 gauge mild steel, which I'm going to make the lower piece out of. Then we headed down the road to Lowe's so that we could get the new fence pickets, and we're using the plastic wood. That way we never have to paint it, never have to do anything to it again, hopefully. All right, so we've made good progress up to this point. We've got the bottom of the gate built out on that side. Now we need to take the wood off of this side, which is our primary swing side where the handle set's gonna go, build out the bottom, and add in our handle set lockbox and extension pole so that the two sides match. So you might be asking yourself, why did you put the gate back on when you could have just finished it? Well, with a day job helping people buy and sell real estate, I have a little bit of time to do this, but not a lot. So I've been making sure that every evening I can put the gates back up, close off my pool area, and move on with regular life. You may have to do the same thing, come home from work on the project a little bit at a time. So back to what we were doing, we're taking the wood off. Yours may be adhered in a number of different ways. There might be self-tapping screws, there might be sheet metal screws, pretty much the same thing. Or you might have carriage bolts with nuts like my gate has. I've got 13 boards on either gate, and I have 3 bolts per board. So I'll get all of these out. I'm just using an impact driver. You could use a wrench, hand tools, whatever works, right? If your wood is as damaged as mine, throw a pair of gloves on, or you'll be picking out little splinters from these boards for days. Ah! So for my next magic trick, we're gonna use a marker to orient the gate. That way, while we're cutting, we're welding, we're moving things around, we know which way is the street side and which way is the house side, which is the top, which is the bottom, because we're gonna have to flip this and rotate it to cut, grind, and get everything situated. I say this from experience because, well, sometimes I don't label things and I mess up, and when I was putting this box together, I did that. So as you can see here, I have the box sitting forward on the street side and flush on the back side. I wanted it the other way around, but I don't know what happened in my head. I probably should have notated it better or on more pieces. Whatever happened, happened. So in order to avoid doing that any further, mark your material. That way you know what you're cutting and which direction things need to face. Now we can orient our lockbox to match how we cut the other gate, which will be 1 inch above this top post. We're gonna cut this out with the Sawzall again, but what I was having some trouble with was getting these cuts started because they're kind of at an awkward angle. So to start the cuts, I'm gonna use a cutoff wheel just to give myself a score zone. That way I can drop the blade in there and cut nice and straight. I did say to support it, right? I guess I forgot to say to clamp it. Oh well. So if you saw that coming, drop down in the comments. Let everybody know you saw it coming before they did. If you're not aware, welds don't like rust or paint. So the outside of your joint should be nice and clean. And I'm gonna clean up the inside just a little bit with a file. That way I don't get any extra porosity from any of that debris trying to percolate through the weld. Much better. Look at it. So we've got the extension added on the bottom here. We've got our center post with our handle box mounted on that side. We'll put our field piece or the bottom of our kick plate in, then we'll flip the whole thing over and we'll finish weld all the other sides. Then we'll grind and smooth and take down all the slag, and we'll be ready to start chopping our boards up to fit inside the upper field, or the field of the gate up here. We have the base plate space added to both gates. We have our vertical extension rails added. Next, what I want to do is, because this would normally be filled with wood where the handle box is, I'm going to cut out some pieces to close off these gaps, and that way here there will be somewhere for the bolt to go through there, the wood can hit, and then land on the back side there. Along with that, we've got drop rods. We need to get the drop rods welded on, but unfortunately, when I was at the metal store, I was supposed to get 4 of these little brackets and I only got 3. So I'm going to use 2 of them and make my own bracket for the bottom, which just retains the pin and keeps it sliding vertically. Very hot. With our brackets cut for our drop rod, what we have to do is we have to set the stick out. Our fence or our gate is going to be 1 inch off of the ground, and we want our drop rods to go down into the ground as far as possible. So what I'm going to do is, in full upward motion, I'm going to leave a 1/2 inch of stick out below the gate, which will leave plenty of room for the gate to swing out. And I'm going to wind up putting a drop rod on both gates. That way, when our normal gate that we open and close is open, we can drop it and lock it in our rocks. Whereas before, we were just kicking a brick in front of it, which is kind of hokey. For $7, an extra drop rod, this will do. So now we just have to get these guys welded on both gates, and then I will finish welding around our box for our extra wood support. With the drop rods welded on, it was time for paint prep. We had the gates hanging at this point, so we did some sanding in place, some painting in place, and then drug them into the shop to do some more painting and more painting. Here I'm using my lift to support it up off of the ground so that I could try to get the inside of the field. This worked okay. I used a little bit of spray paint on all of the welds to make sure that I was getting in any of the porosity that was there, and then came back with the roller and the little paintbrush and just painted. This was my little science experiment with a gallon of muriatic acid on these old rusty bolts. I was able to clean these up quite well, and it was kind of fun. I left that muriatic acid in there for a little while, and then I came back after I felt like it was done, added some baking soda to neutralize it. Okay, so the gate's coming together. I've got most of it painted here. Got one board installed, and you can see that the lower kick panel is still empty. The steel is over there. That's because I ordered a new tool that hasn't showed up yet. I'm getting a plasma cutter because, well, I found one really cheap. So I'm gonna give that a shot. Once that gets here, I'll cut this out and weld the bottom section in. But for now, what I'm gonna do is put the gate back together. I'm gonna put the boards in, rehang it, and get my lockbox and latch set up. And then later when it comes, I'll get that part together later in the video for you guys. Later, I don't know, whenever it'll show up for me. So take a look at what I've got going on here. I just set up a stop block on my chop saw, and I'm gonna chop all these guys down. I'm leaving about 1/8 to, I don't know, maybe a little bit less than 1/8 on the bottom and at the top. I've got a couple of spacers, so this is gonna be my bottom spacer. You can see that's not very thick. And then these are gonna be my side-to-side spacers. Come on, camera, focus, there we go. Here, just some steel plates that fit in between here along the way so that I can get a gap. Now this gap is smaller and bigger because the end of the fence here isn't exactly square, the gate from when it was built originally. Turns out Many of them are like that, and you can come to expect that that'll be the case if you have a gate that you didn't custom build yourself to fit the opening. These gates are made in a production line, typically in a larger section, cut down on site to fit the opening, and then the guys run on and do all the next ones. So production, you're not going to get perfection, which we're not looking for here. We're looking for a nicer gate that will really bring up the appearance of the side of our house. Well, the gate's starting to really come together. We have 3 more pieces of wood to cut out of 2 pieces. So we have the top section of the lockbox, the bottom section of the lockbox side, and then the 1 piece for the non-moving side, or the mostly stationary side. Both of these are going to have to be ripped down to a narrower width as well as their height. It was at this point that my plasma cutter had finally showed up, so I could get that big old piece of plate steel out, draw out my measurements, which weren't exactly square, mainly because the gate wasn't square. Cut out the long strips, do a bunch of grinding, and a bunch more grinding. And then I was able to get going on actually finishing up this project. I know it's taken a while to get to this point in the video, and for me, it's been about 2 weeks that I've been working on this. So I applaud you for making it this far. If you've made it this far, drop down into the comments, drop me a high five, and I'll high five you back. Thanks so much. So after grinding for what seems like an eternity, I think I have everything set where I want it. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the plate in, and I'm gonna run a bead in the middle here, and then every 6 inches all the way across the top and the bottom. And for the kick plate, that should be more than enough to hold it in. Then we can get it painted and back up on the gate. We're using these 5/8 rods as spacers. Camera's on, bud. And then we just have plates screwed, or not screwed, wedged up on the back side. With those plates, we'll move them down along to make sure that we're not welding at a funny location. You got your hood out?
Yeah, it's open.
Okay.
Then are we going to want to clamp down?
No, we're just gonna get her in there.
Make sure it stays down.
Yeah.
Then make sure you're not bending the end.
Yeah, make sure I'm not pushing the bottom out. I think what I'll do is I'll drop a bead right in the corner.
Yeah, you just start welding then.
We're just doing big tacks.
Big tacks, yeah.
Yeah, because that's not going anywhere. Yeah, I just want to work my way over.
Yeah.
Spread the heat out some. I guess I'm gonna need this in there. Can you lift up for me? We're not melting any boards though, right? Cool. These are not the recommended welding gloves. Okay, we're almost there. Careful, there's going to be some hot pieces. Now all we got to do is get the paint on the bottom, get everything sealed up. We'll get the primary gate rehung, pull the secondary side off, build the panel for the bottom, which is going to be a rinse and repeat of the primary gate, then paint it, of course, and get it rehung. The adjustment procedure is fairly simple, like we adjusted earlier. It is a pain in the butt. You'll hate it, especially with these hinges here that capture the backside of the nut. But once it's done, you are good to go and ready to start enjoying your gate. Put our marking compound on. Use our approved handle. We'll bring the gate all the way closed. Now I know where I need to cut. So we're going to start by drilling above and below where we want our cut line. All right, I can see it's really close. Now we just got to cut those flat lines in there. So let's get our gate spring back on. This part here that spins, this is going to go to the top. The fixed position will go to our fixed post. I've already taken the keeper out that locks our spring into place. That's this piece. As you can tell, the spring's not currently doing anything because the wind is opening the gate. My gate, the adjustment is with a 1-inch wrench. And if you're unsure which way to turn it one direction and see, is it pulling the gate open or is it trying to push it closed? If you went the wrong direction, all you got to do is take the keeper back out, try the other direction, put the keeper in there to hold it in place while you get another rotation. And what we're doing is rotating towards the gate right now. And you can see the gate's pulling open, which is clearly the wrong direction. I wanted to verify that it wasn't just the wind pulling on it before. We want the spring tight enough that it closes the gate, but we don't want it so tight that when it goes to close, it's going to take a little kid's hand off. So we want to pull our gate back. That's enough pressure, like I was saying, to close the gate, but not so much pressure that if somebody was over here, an animal was over here, your dog was following you in and out of the yard, that it's going to take their tail off. I can say that from experience because when I was a kid, my dog was following me around the yard. I went into the side yard, pulled the gate open, gate closed on her, chopped the end of her tail right off, swinging blood everywhere. That sucks. So don't over tighten it. It just has to overcome the force of whatever weight you have in the gate and a little bit of wind coming down the side yard. So the lock that I'm using is this manual control keypad lock with push buttons, springs, and no batteries, is because this is going to be out in the sun. And I really did not want to have to deal with batteries over and over and over, or the batteries baking inside and popping. As it is, we're in and out the front door all the time, and I have digital locks everywhere else. The front door, I'm going through batteries every 3 to 4 months, and that would suck out here on the side. So with this handle set, it locks on both sides. So you can't get out or you can't get in. However, it does offer a passage mode for if you're having a party or you want to be able to just get out all the time. So I'll program the inside on passage mode, and then if we do have a party or something of that nature, I'll program the outside temporarily on passage mode. And it's all in the instructions that come in the kit. I can link this down below in the description so that if you're looking for something like this, awesome. Now, something that I learned recently that I hadn't dealt with in the past was specifically how the striker needs to be installed. If you push the whole thing in and it's latched in, well, then you can move the whole thing. But the little locking dial here, if you push it in like it's supposed to be when latched, you can't open the door. That's why your little strike plate is square like that, so that it will catch the latch and put it into the locked position. That way somebody's not going to be able to just jiggle the door and work it open. Now, I do have a big plate on the outside of mine, so there's no getting into this from the outside of the gate, but it's important to recognize that we want that depressed when the gate is closed. All right, our last step's the easy one. We're going to get our handles in. The outside here, no screws, and we put our gasket on. We've got our lock pin that locks into the latch, and on the inside, our spring goes in. with our drive mechanism that into the handle set. Probably can't see past my head, but that's okay. You get it. And then we're lining up our screws. You can see currently locked. It'll open. And then when we close it, all right, this was a fun project. It took me just over 2 weeks to complete the whole build, doing it a little bit at a time each day, waiting for my plasma cutter to come, waiting to get the steel, picking up the wood, all the different processes. At the end of the day, I'm really happy with it. It's taller than me now, lines up with the top of the wall, and it closes really nicely. So one of the changes that I made was I added this stop here at the bottom so that the weight of the gate wouldn't swing back and forth down there, and we get a really solid connection to here. With the code on there, I feel great that nobody's gonna accidentally wind up in the backyard versus just a little clip on the top. And wow, I'm just really happy that I was able to get this done. First time ever doing a project like this. I hope that it gave you some inspiration so that you can take on your own gate modification, refresh, or rebuild. And we'll see you in the next video.